Oh, you heard that sound, and that means it's time for Staring at Goats. It's still a global pandemic. It's not getting better. Maybe we're moving into the second wave. Did we ever end the first wave? Which goat is it time to eat? Because things are getting desperate, y'all. Boy, oh boy, we are here again to join you on your journey through the plague lands. Your three hosts, your three guides, to make sure you don't stumble and fall in a spiked pit in this Mad Max reality. I am your host, Steven, joined as always, by the only person with actual credibility to talk about scientific things, Jacob. And this week, we are wonderfully joined by another person who can speak about scientific things, my good friend, Patrick McGrady. Patrick, welcome to the show, sir.
Howdy. Thanks for having me. I don't know if I can speak too much to the scientific things, but I can definitely BS on it.
Well, see, that's the goal, is just to say enough things that people just start to believe things that you say. It's a strategy that's worked well over the course of history, I think.
Perfect.
Talk enough. And that's certainly what we plan to do today on Staring at Goats, our 29th episode, which means 30 weeks, because we missed one. 30 weeks in the pandemic, well over half a year. But I think Patrick, we want to start off by highlighting you. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what's going on in your world.
Okay. Well, I am born and raised in southern West Virginia, but transplanted to the great state of Connecticut, where I am an assistant professor of sociology at the University of New Haven. I've been up here for 8 or 9 years, I can't remember. But I am a sociologist by training. I teach a lot of courses in sociology and a lot of courses in statistics these days for some reason. But yeah, so that's like sort of like the more professional side of things. But things about me. How am I?
Well, let's not glaze over the instruments hanging like right over your shoulder.
Yeah. Oh yes. This has been my pandemic project, I guess I should say. Which I think we'll probably talk more about later on. But I did just get this nice new bass guitar last week.
Ooh, nice.
And I've been kind of getting more back into that and into music. And I've been actually participating in a sort of a choral project where we're recording songs and going to put them all together in a video. So it's late August I started learning Christmas music, so that's for that, which is interesting. But that's
how awful is it to learn Christmas music in August and just play
awful.
it nonstop?
Terrible. It's terrible.
August and September. I mean, it's hot outside. You're over there strumming away at Little Drummer Boy.
Yeah. It's I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the holiday music in general. Back in high school, I played in the handbell choir, and we played the same Christmas music every year, and we would start around this time. So it's just I'm burnt out on the holiday music. August.
I'm 100% with you on the holiday music. And try as I might, I want to enjoy it, but I've listened to it for 35 years now, and it never changes. And my word, if I hear Little Drummer Boy, I'm like, turn it. I can't handle it. The repetition makes me want to throw something out the window.
The only acceptable version of Little Drummer Boy is the karaoke version from The Office.
The Angela version where she's standing there with
the little hand thing. Yeah.
Now, do you think that's the strangest hobby that you've picked back up during the quarantine, or have you picked up something stranger?
It's I think this has been the constant. I've jumped around on things. I've done, I think, what I would consider the idiot version of home improvement stuff, where you can do some stuff that doesn't really require that much skill, and if it doesn't look great, then it's it works. I built a ramp to an outbuilding because I got a riding lawnmower. I built a fire pit out back.
Oh, nice.
And it's like, but it's all square, right? It's all 90-degree angles, so it's kind of hard to screw that up. Although there's certainly some screw ups in it, but
Did you actually make it out of brick and like lay the whole mortar in the whole 9 yards, or
oh,
did
not
you
that,
just say,
not that much. We just dug out like a 12 by 12 like square in the ground, and then kind of leveled it with like paver sand, and then put down like a barrier, poured a bunch of gravel, and then like in the middle built like this sort of 3 by 3 like square kind of column for the for the fire. So it wasn't, it was the, it was a way to avoid like all like the whole like having to level things over and over, because I get impatient, and I was like, it's just a place to build a fire. It doesn't have to be that pretty, but
yeah?
it worked out okay.
Someone's been watching a lot of This Old House, because I feel
Yeah.
like that's exactly what I learned about how to lay a paver. Is exactly what you just described. Is the guy like, okay, you say you want to build a whack, we're gonna build a walk. We gotta lay the paver sand. That guy.
Yep. Yep.
Not Bob Vila, but the other guy, This
No.
Old House guy.
This
Yeah.
Old House guy. I've learned more things about This Old House than I ever thought I would need. Now, was the home improvement project, was that early in pandemic when everyone was doing it, or have you been consistently managing that?
Late.
Really?
I was late. It began with the shed, right? So last summer, we bought this house, and it has like a massive dropping hill in the back, a lot of like land to mow. And so I opted to buy a riding lawnmower, as a good West Virginian does.
Smart.
But then realized that my outbuilding had like a very, very steep incline, and so it was not going to go up. So it started with kind of building a new ramp, which came out okay. And then in this room, actually, there was some kind of like, the floorboards kind of needed a little bit of a replacement there, which is, again, it's all 90-degree angles. So like that was like, let's just measure it up and nail some boards to the wall and call it a day. But
that's amazing.
But yeah, the fire pit was like the last one, and it was more of like, it was more kind of like looking for, like, we're heading into the fall. Well, we are in the fall. It's gonna get cold up here, and we can't have people indoors, to hang out. And so the second best thing is to build a big heat source outside and sit outside and make s'mores and drink beer.
Nice. Now, you mentioned you can't really have a whole lot of people indoors. So where are you at relative to, I guess it's a quarantine bubble? I mean, do you have people over? Do you have a small bubble that you've stuck with? How have you worked through that process?
Yeah, it's been a journey. I when shutdown happened, which was, for up here, it was a little bit early. Like, second week of March, we were shut down, and I didn't go further than a mile from my house for about 3 weeks, and then um, grocery stores, I would go like late at night. But I'm at a point like now where I'm okay. I have a mask on. I feel okay. I don't do like what frivolous things, I guess. Like, I'm not gonna go hang out in a mall, or I go to the gym, which is a big open space. Everyone wears masks and whatnot, but I have not done a sit down restaurant yet. I'm still not. I want to be in a place like where I can get out if I need to get out. And in a restaurant, you're kind of stuck until you get your check. So yeah, I've kind of leveled. I've been going to work,
Okay.
teaching classes. Where I work has been really, really good with like protocols, with enforcing mask use and all that stuff. Doing random testing, which is the only downside there is they make you do the test yourself, which is a very interesting process. Yeah, no, it's like basically like because I got pulled for one. It's like there's like a long table in this outdoor tent, and like a medical professional stands at one end, I stand at the other, and like I have to turn to the side and like she watched me kind of put it in, and she's like, further, further, further. Keep going, keep going.
Oh God,
It's like just slowly.
that's horrible.
We saw a
But
video of this. Somebody tried to automate this process. They had a robotic arm with a big swab just come in and just keep pushing back. And it looked like the swab went all the way back to like their spine. And
no,
it just looked painful.
yeah, no, it's I mean, it was discomfort, but it's yeah, I would prefer doing it myself than a robot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to get stabbed in the brain.
I want to
Yeah,
walk
completely
back to
agree.
you eating at a restaurant and talking about how you shouldn't be anywhere you can't get out of, because all I
Mhm.
could think of is like the way the mafia eats. Like now you have to dine like a mafia member. Like you need to be in a place where your back's to the wall, you can see everything around you, you know where
Yep.
your exits are. It's key. So now we're all dining like, Don Vito or whatever, if you're going to go in a restaurant. And I think that's a good tactic. We talked about a couple weeks ago about the if you're an adult with COVID, there's a 50% chance you got it from dining at a restaurant.
Yeah.
So that the restaurants are vectors, because your mask, people treat masks like this magic item. I have it with me, and now that I'm at my table, I'm in a secret bubble where I can spit and breathe and whatever, and nothing can touch me.
You've got the magic item over your face and the Jesus juice on your hands, and you're good to go.
It's a protective talisman. Yeah, it's the good thing is there's a lot of like nice I mean restaurants up here and all over the place, but like in my town in particular, there's been a lot of like carry out
Yeah.
places. There's a place down the road that early on started doing like carry out cocktails, which is kind of cool. So
Interesting. You could get
and
your
actually
Bloody
like
Mary with your pasta.
yeah, you get like a little spritz or whatever. Or the liquor store right down the block here, they did curbside. Like you phoned in your order and then they would come out. You pop your trunk and they load you up there. But yeah, it's the restaurants are still like I just don't want to feel trapped. Is the thing.
Yeah.
The gym I still go to, which I know is sort of a bit of a not a great. It's definitely a risk there, but it's an open place, and I can just up and go if I feel. And I have done that before. There's been a few cases where I've seen like some bad behaviors. And I'm like, I'm just not feeling this, and
So
um,
talk to me a little bit about the gym, because that's one thing that I would love to be able to do. And they reopened gyms here in North Carolina 2 weeks, no, a week and a half ago. And so people are starting to funnel their way back to gyms. And me, I can't do it. I'm like, I can't be in a closed, and they're doing limited occupancy. I think it's 50% max occupancy. And I mean, so they're doing the protective things here. Are they doing those same things there? And do you feel like, man, I feel comfortable doing this?
it varies. They definitely they're doing 50%. There's I think they've like tripled the amount of cleaning stations. Lots of like people like you wipe down before and after. And I think probably about 75% of people are wearing their masks correctly, with that other 25% doing like the nose thing, which is like I don't think understand how that works, but which I have almost gotten myself into trouble over because like and this is I gotta get a hold on this, because if I'm out in public places and I see someone like like with bad mask behavior, like I will mutter like things about them to them under my breath, and it's gotten slowly increasing in volume that I'm probably gonna get myself punched soon. Um,
You know,
but
you are in New England. You might want to be careful about that, because they're no joke about that stuff.
yeah, no, it's I can yeah, but it's felt relatively safe. It's times of the day matter. I found that like like when it was work from home all the time, it was nice. I go like mid morning and like it was dead.
Yeah.
And I avoid the weekends for sure. Don't go on the weekends, and now it's just like I'll just go super early if I make it. It's also a matter if I make it there. That's the other part
Yes,
of
I feel you. Now, has anybody around you got sick?
No, no. There was a bit of a scare last week with my mom. She had some symptoms, but it just turns out it wasn't COVID, which is we're thankful for that. But no one I know really has gotten it. I think, yeah, it's uh I have some friends who had symptoms way back in February, January, that kind of like they, sort of they think they had it, sort of thing, and people they were in close contact with eventually tested positive, kind of thing. But um, otherwise, not no, there hasn't been any direct cases in my orbit, at least.
Okay.
I am getting a lot of like of cases of people where at work who are being told to quarantine, but that's an abundance of caution kind of thing there. But yeah, no one directly.
If your mom gets
Has.
it, I'm gonna punch COVID in the face because I will not
Yeah, no,
allow it.
I was. I think she got a little annoyed with us because like we're on like this group text and like like I was every day like either my brother and I were like, hey, how you doing? Any results on your test yet? And like finally she's like she sent a screenshot like Gary, you can stop worrying, it's negative. But
Yeah.
yeah, that was a little always worrying when I mean I know a lot of people recover, but still it's just like this weird thing that but yeah, luckily so far
Nobody.
nobody.
That's
Good.
good. That's
Now,
good
I
news.
do have a
Yeah.
quick question follow up to that. How do you keep yourself grounded? Because if you don't have a whole lot of people around you that's gotten sick and nobody in your immediate circle's gotten sick and you're like, maybe it's not as big of a deal. I mean, how do you personally just go, no, it's still a big deal. I still don't want to do this. I still have this specific comfort level that I have with it.
Because I'm a bit of a hypochondriac. um No, it's more like I think about the collective nature of it. It's like the masks, right? I think, and I mean I'm definitely not this type of this qualified to talk about them, but the masks are not really about you protecting you; it's about protecting others. And so it's more about like sort of like a collective responsibility that what I kind of rely on, and then also kind of thinking about like it's not just like health, but it's also if things kind of get bad, that's real jobs that people will lose because businesses shut down. Or if heaven forbid I have it and I have no symptoms and then I spread it to someone else, like so there's sort of like this kind of thinking of like the sort of the collective nature around this that that one I want to protect myself, but two I want to protect people around me. And so that's sort of um, the thinking that I have, and I think luckily we're kind of getting to a point like where it's probably more deviant to buck the trends and buck the protocols than it is to follow them.
Yeah.
Um, at least, I mean, it's sort of what I've observed up here. I don't know about where you all are at, but is it kind of, so I think it's just I focus on the collective. I think is sort of has been my approach to it. And we've developed like kind of bubbles of people that we that we'll hang out with, outdoor kind of gathering sort of things where we're maintaining distance and and um, which has been that's been very nice. It's been once it kind of got warm, it was nice to actually see people and not just do
Yes.
Zoom. I definitely did a lot of Zoom happy hours that were fun at first, but then when I came back down to my office the morning after and there were like a bunch of bottles on the ground and like I was like, maybe I need to take a little dry out for a little bit.
Jacob, that does bring to mind like he's talking about the more people are doing it than aren't doing it. More people are abiding by the rule and aren't abiding by the rule.
Yeah.
Whatever happened to free NC or whatever that rebel movement about masks? Are they still a thing?
I have not heard a peep out of them in probably the last 4 months.
Yeah.
Because they were big when our governor shut things down, and Department of Health and Human Services shut everything down here in North Carolina. they were adamant about reopening, and they marched on the Capitol. And I mean, there was a lot of uproar from that group, and then all of a sudden it was like a flip switched, and they just disappeared. Um, and I haven't heard anything. I don't know if they've still been as raucous as they've been in the past, but at least it hasn't hit my radar.
Yeah, yeah. You guys didn't have to deal with that up in the north, right? You're.
I mean, no, we had. I mean, we had that too.
Yeah.
We had. I mean, it's you have that everywhere.
Yeah.
My thinking on that is that those tend to be like a minority with a much louder megaphone than others. But no, we had people marching, protesting at the Capitol up in Hartford about, you know, uh, this is our rights, you're infringing. And I actually ended up like I made the mistake when I moved to this town last summer to joining the community Facebook page, which is yeah, that's I mean I got myself in trouble there, but like I had to like exit because you definitely had like people on there. Like there was this one thing. It was the most ridiculous thing, like where this woman was trying to organize a protest at this park because the city had shut down this park, and she thought that was just unfair, and it's just the flu. We should get over it, and she's gonna organize this protest, and like this whole like just back and forth exchange, where I'm just like wasting hours just reading through this. It's just like it's just one person, really, but they're getting all this
Sink.
attention.
It was an absolute sink of time.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
So I dropped out of that forum. It's been good. It's been a good move.
What's interesting is that the message is often lost in some of that whenever they're doing those protests, because I mean the bottom line is the economy was struggling in April, May, and June, and people needed to get back to work just to make the economy kind of just restart that engine, right? And their message was that of, we've got to get something going here because we can't just sit here stagnant. But I feel like it was lost in the way that they presented that message. And it wasn't that and maybe I'm wrong here, but I don't think anybody was saying, look, we should take in jeopardy the lives of the people and the citizens around us. But I think that's kind of the way it came across, unfortunately. And I wish that there would have been a better way to communicate the message of how do we get the economy back rolling in a safe way and have an open dialogue about this, instead of the closed off dialogue that we ended up having.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a lot like the old there's not really an old saying, but the idea that you complain but you don't do anything. It was kind of like, let's get a bunch of people together, we'll all complain, but we're not actually going to offer solutions. It's like working for the government. The government sucks. Well, help. What do you have an idea? Because I would love to hear one. Or you could just fuss. Like, what's going on? And I think that's a lot of what we saw, is just people coming out and going, I can't work and I can't do this. It's like, well, okay, let's propose a solution that says, let's get back to work and let's figure out a way to do it safely, and let's try to find a way to come together on this. But it was so loud, it's hard to have that discussion when you're just getting yelled at.
Well, and it was also kind of like wrapped up in like some other this is America, we're free, we're supposed to be free. What about liberty? And they didn't do themselves favors by carrying these big guns. The message got lost. It was just I think I kind of also view that like a sort of as a frustration, where you do have like a lot of folks who were legitimately kind of like staring down like rent's coming due and my job has furloughed me, and there's not really been that much like action from the state to expand unemployment or things like that, which I think those are the conversations that we should have been having, along with sort of like how do we have a safe like work environment, but instead it was a rah rah rah, my freedom.
Yeah.
It got lost, unfortunately.
I feel like if there was more of like a Rosie the Riveter approach to like, wear your mask, let's punch COVID in the face, it could have been so much different if there had been more of a campaign of like, yes, we are America. Yes, we are strong. Yes, we can wear a mask. It's all
They could
about
have
pitch.
leaned into that. They could have leaned into American exceptionalism, right?
Hmm.
They could have said, "We are America. We can do this. Come on, guys."
Yes,
But
100%.
instead, they said, we stormed Normandy and thousands of people died then. We can do it now. And you're like, wait, what? Wait. But we don't have to. I don't mean to compare the storming at the beaches of Normandy to COVID-19, but it's what came into my head first. But yeah, like you feel like if we had just approached it with more of to say patriotic defense of our people by doing just this simple act of putting on a mask to go in a grocery store, so much
And
could have been avoided.
I do think, in all fairness, early on there was not much known. I mean, we
Mm-hmm.
we didn't realize anything, and I mean, even Dr. Fauci himself came out last week and said, "Look, early on, I tried to recommend not wearing a mask because we were on a PPE shortage. We needed masks going to hospitals. We didn't need the average American wearing a mask at that moment. We needed the hospital workers who were on the front lines wearing a mask." And so I feel like we're having a disingenuous conversation about history, saying, "Well, Dr. Fauci said this." Well, no, look at what happened at that moment. He said, "Stay at home, don't
Yeah,
go outside. Therefore,
right.
you don't need a mask right now," and let the mask. So there was so much different. I mean, now I feel like we're in a much better place relative to mask wearing, availability of masks, availability of PPE. And you could give credit to whoever you want to. If you want to give credit to the president and Operation Warp Speed, feel free, because they definitely removed red tape. If you want to give credit to some of these manufacturing companies, man, they did. They shut some of their lines down and started making masks. I mean,
Yep.
so availability definitely happened here, and there was a lot of things that happened to make them more available.
And I'm
Yeah, I mean,
actually. Oh, go ahead, Patrick.
you go ahead.
I was just gonna. I just looked up the mask use chart at this COVID health data website that I poke at every now and then, and like according to the charts, I don't know where they get all this polling from, but 70% almost universal mask wearing going on. So it's increased. Like back in March, it was at 7. Um, so more people are certainly doing it, and social distancing is still a thing. We're at what looks to be negative 15% of our typical mobility. We're down, so people are still kind of staying inside to some degree, and they're wearing masks. And I think that might continue to grow. It looks like it's been pretty flat for the last few months. But we might see that grow continuously. But go ahead, Patrick.
No, I was going to say, like, I think it'd be interesting to look at, like, also how there's been like this market for masks too. Like, um, I have, because I'm all about the plaids. Like, I bought a bunch of plaid, like, kind of like ones. Like, I bet, like, I think it's been kind of cool to see, like, the creativity of some companies, smaller ones, that kind of create like these, like things that don't look like a medical mask, but still, accomplish what they're supposed to do.
I
Yeah.
got to tell you, I got to give props here. If landed wherever you're at, if you're walking home from one of the debates, or if you're still in Oregon or Washington or California or wherever you're at, listen to this episode. You called it. Staring at Goats, episode 1, Landon Holly said this. He said, "Masks are going to be the new fashion statement. Mark my words." And I'm like, holy shit, how prescient was he?
Yeah.
He called it from day one.
Yeah.
Landon.
Hey, that's the
I mean,
first time
like,
he's been right in years, but we'll give it to him.
like, look at,
Block
like,
right twice.
there's been, like, even like bands, like when like bands like do like pre-order like album bundles. It's like there's now, like, you can get a T-shirt, or you can get like a mask with like our band on it, right? It's yeah. They even gave us, like, at our university, like, university branded masks, and they're pretty sharp. But yeah, like this one company started making like these plaid ones, which I'm like, I'm all in here. Get me all those masks, please.
That's
Um,
awesome.
I'll take them. I think Staring at Goats will even produce a mask via Redbubble. It's
Yes.
ridiculously expensive, but you can buy one if you want with our goat logo on it.
I'm
So
gonna
it's
go.
there if you want it.
So, Patrick, I got one more question for you before we kind of get into some of the rest of the show. But what do you miss most about your pre-COVID life?
Ooh, music, live shows.
Yeah.
I'm this is gonna take me a long time to get over, but like I had like an amazing like birthday weekend concert lineup. I was gonna go up to Boston to see Jimmy Eat World play,
Oh,
and then the next night, Tegan and Sarah were playing in New Haven, and like COVID like just kind of canceled it. But I miss. I mean, I miss going to concerts, and I miss all things like communal music making. Like I up here, I'm part of a chorus where we've been meeting on Zoom to rehearse stuff. It's not the same, but like I miss like sitting in a room making music with people and um um so all things like kind of just music performance, music kind of communal making, and then it's also like going to shows and like just sort of like the whole thing that goes into that. I think that's sort of the big thing I miss. It's we had like this back when we kind of got shut down, we decided we're gonna focus on making one kind of virtual choir video, and we did Bridge Over Troubled Water. And
Oh,
like it was like when we got like the final kind of cut of it, that was like the first time in like at that point like in 2 months that I heard my fellow chorus members singing, and it was like a very unexpectedly emotional kind of moment
huh.
for a lot of us, kind of like that. But yeah, so I just miss like the communal like music making and
yeah,
in
music,
concerts.
you tie your heart into it. Like it weaves its way through your being. Particularly if you are a maker of music. Like you said that Jimmy Eat World concert, I had tickets to the same one. I was so pumped to see Jimmy Eat World in the Front Bottoms because I love both of those bands so much. And COVID, and I was like, "Eat a butt, COVID! I'm done with you." And then I was gonna get tickets to Steve Martin and Martin Short at the Redhead Amphitheater down here, and I was like, "That's gonna be great. Maybe COVID will be gone by October." Screw COVID. Now I don't get to see Steve Martin, and he's like old, and who knows how many more times they're gonna go on tour. But yeah, man, I feel you with the music stuff. Particularly, that's cool. You guys are at least trying to rehearse, but like with conferencing, man, the latency's an issue. It's hard to stay on time.
Yeah, it's basically like we all mute our video and or our mics, and we have a director with a piano kind of playing through parts, and then it's like, okay, now you all sing it, and like we're just singing, but he can't hear us.
Yeah.
But basically, what's going to kind of lead up to it is that we all will, record our own parts, which is a very, very frustrating thing to do. um, um, uh, I don't like hearing my voice with nothing else behind it. But yeah, but I mean, at the very least, like it's nice just to have like that check in, and like that particular organization. Like, there's been things kind of going like on outside of the music that we're doing to kind of make sure that people are okay. A lot of people in that group are kind of isolated or not close to family or things like that, and so it's been kind of cool seeing like that part, at least with that, and all other places like people going above and beyond to check in. But yeah, it's just yeah, it's there's nothing like kind of being in the same room, just like making music with people, even if it's like terrible loud punk rock, as we used to do back in high school. It's still, I mean, there's just nothing like that.
You say terrible, I say unique.
Unique.
And
We were
glorious.
cutting edge. Like we were like, what other band would have decided to put when they're recording a CD? We're just gonna use one microphone and one track. What other band would do that?
No one. No, we're trailblazers.
Yes.
We don't need you.
Without capital to fully fund their band, it
We
sounds
had
like.
zero capital.
We had a pirated version of Cakewalk, I believe.
Yeah, Cakewalk. I remember that. That was great software. We've got one of the fans, or one of our Legionnaires in the Legion of Dorks, as an audio engineer. He would probably love hearing the word cakewalk. I bet that would bring him back memories as well. Oh, the good days. Stop it. You're gonna make me remember things.
My bad.
But no, you're great. It's wonderful. I actually have Evening Side's greatest hits on my desk right here. So
Oh gosh.
yeah, I can't play it in anything because I don't have a CD player anywhere. But I own it. I have it right here.
I'll loan you one, Stephen. I'll loan you one.
Thanks for that. Yeah.
404 self-storage
Yep. Yeah. If you got one over there, I'll listen. This is me and Patrick and our buddy Jason rocking it out, uh, melting faces. But
I'm sure I can
anyway,
find one down in self-storage
I'm
drive
sure you
downstairs.
can. You probably have a portable Sony Walkman with 2 minute skip protection. Watch out, everybody. Uh, Moving right along, though, we'll go into a little bit of how Jacob and I are doing. Thank you, Patrick, for sharing all that with us. That was wonderful. And the altruism thing, getting together to support each other, is one thing that continues to shine out of all this in varying places. But my big thought in the last week, really, in today, was how much quarantine do we have left in us? How much longer is staying in, wearing a mask, or staying in, not going anywhere? Because Jacob and I have been pretty extreme in our pod as to not going anywhere. Did you go to the doctor? Report it. Did you go to the grocery store? Report it. Because we have people in our lives that are way more susceptible to worse symptoms than just your average 30-year-old human. That we've got more things going on. And so my question was, kind of as I was thinking through it, is like, how much more time do I have in this? And does it really matter how much time I think I have in this? Does it really matter how I feel about, like, not going to Florida to visit my parents, for instance, which has just been a horrendous thing since we were going to go see them in March and didn't. Like, that weighs on me daily, and I'm like, when am I going to go? How am I going to go? And my mom listens to this show. She knows where my head's at anytime I talk about this stuff. But like, I want to go. I don't know how to get there safely. I know they both work. I don't know that how I feel matters in the long run of whether I can or can't participate. Is it worth the risk? How much risk am I willing to take? Like, it's nuts. And that's starting to weigh. Like, I live at 2 week increments. I remember 2 weeks and I look forward 2 weeks. I'm very much a person of the moment. So largely I just go about my business and this is what we do. But there's things externally. Sam's experience in life as a 5-year-old has been markedly different than I ever hoped it would be. My experience going to see people that I care about, markedly different than I was planning on. So those kind of things pop up and I'm like, son of a butt, am I going to go? How am I going to do it? Does it matter? Anyway, so that's where my psychology's been.
Well, we're going to talk about this a little bit more during the news section, because we have some updates about what's happening worldwide and what we're seeing. So we're probably going to get into this. How much more can you expect?
Yeah. And if you can't tolerate it, what do? It's like when Sam was born and we were dealing with all kinds of things in his first year. I remember Stephanie was just like, I just don't know if I can do it. It's like, well, if we don't do it, we die. So yeah. You either do it or you die. This is, you either keep moving forward with life or you stop. And I don't want to stop, so I'm going to keep doing what I have to do. So that kind of stuff, is there. But yeah, anyway.
One foot in front of the other.
Just I'm that kind of person anyway. Tell me to jump, I say how high. Let's go. What do I need to do? But Jacob, how are you?
I've had kind of an up and down week. I mean, this week has been interesting. What I found out another casualty of COVID-19 relative to something dear to me specifically. I found out that my alma mater canceled one of a lot of their athletic programs, and more specifically, one of the programs that I was actively involved in. So many of you know that I got a full scholarship to swim, Division I collegiate swimming, and my alma mater had to shut that program down about a month and a half ago, and the reason why they had to shut it down was because there was a huge budget shortfall, and they tried to figure out how to balance the budget, and the only way they could do it was start cutting programs. And so that was one of the casualties of COVID-19 was something that's very near and dear to my heart. Hell, that put me through school debt free. And I struggle with that because I'm starting to see those kinds of things and those kind of cuts happening on a fairly routine basis. And Aga is going to give me some shit over here, but I'm seeing layoffs all happening all around and furloughs turning into layoffs. And I'm seeing Main Street just struggling. And this is just another example. And this one's a little bit closer to me. But I'm seeing these examples all over the place, and I'm wondering how much more can we keep cutting and keep cutting and keep cutting before we finally start seeing some major ramifications across the country. And then the other thing that's happening in my life is my son turned 6 months, and so we had to go to a 6 month doctor's visit, and he's doing great. And the doctor looks at Ashley and says, "Well, how's the socialization skills?" And Ashley goes, "Huh? What do you mean socialization skills?" So those kinds of things I'm starting to think about, because he's starting to do things where he's understanding some things, and he's not going to remember it long term. But I those some of the thoughts about socialization are starting to creep into my head, and I probably don't have anything to worry about. And Kelly Colby's going to call me out here and say, "Jacob, you got plenty of time. Don't worry about that. He's too young to worry about that." But you can't help it, because he knows 4 people in his life, and 2 of which he sees every day.
Yeah.
So I do struggle with that a little bit. And like you said, how long can we make it? How long can we keep this up? And how long is it going to be healthy to continue to keep this up? Those are some other things that mental health and societal health and getting back to norms. And have we started losing some of those social norms that we've established over the many years that we've been doing the things that we've been doing? I don't know. I mean, these are all going to be fantastic questions that hopefully we'll hit a little bit later tonight on the show.
Yeah, yeah. When does new normal set in, and when do we all accept it? I think is the big question. And I think the real answer to that is there's no such thing as normal. We've never had normal. It's just being an adult is always when things slow down over and over and over until you die, because it never does. You never settle. There's always some curveball you're getting.
Yeah.
But yeah. Well, let's dive into the isolation report. And Patrick, I would love for you to chime in on any of these news stories if you've got a comment or a thought. But we'll
Excellent.
go ahead and get in this, and let's find out what happened this week. A 25-year-old man becomes first in the U.S. to contract coronavirus twice, with the second infection becoming more severe. Nevada man, what's his power? Became infected with the COVID-19 virus again after having been infected the first time. On April 18th, he tested positive at a community testing event and recovered on his own by April 27th. He tested negative again 2 times in mid-May. He started feeling bad again on May 28th. This time the symptoms were worse, including fever, nausea, diarrhea, other digestive stuff. He tested positive again on June 5th, and this time had to be hospitalized with shortness of breath, so significantly worse. Doctors say that he was infected with 2 genetically different viruses. It's too early to tell how rare or common this is because we just don't know. The basic guidance is not to let your guard down just because you've had the disease once. So, in other words, don't run around telling everyone you're immune and you can do whatever you want. Bad tactics. Not a good plan. Not a good look for you.
How about this? Immunity's not a wrong statement, but there's a window of time in which antibodies are going to be in your system. And we've talked about this on the show. It may be 3 months, it may be 4 months. Antibodies could be rolling around in your system, and you could technically not get it for a couple of months. So you might be safe for a couple of months, but that doesn't mean that you're going to be safe for, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 months, 6 months.
And even this guy wasn't safe for a month. He was safe for maybe a month and a half, but it was a genetically different strain, and it had a different signature that his immune response from the previous one evidently didn't attach to. So there is a threat for these different strains, and you're right. You may be immune to a lot of it, but it's not worth going out there and acting like a dummy and just drinking after your friends at the pub. Doctors also want to assure us that this doesn't mean that a vaccine would be impossible, which is everyone's first thought when they hear, oh no, 2 infections. Just that we may need to know more about the virus and our body's responses before declaring victory. So there's
Amen.
That. Yeah. Let's know more, says the scientist. I think that's a fair assessment. We should know more.
Yeah. Now, did I read an article? Maybe one of you guys read the same thing, but somebody that was infected the second time died, and I don't remember where that was. But did anybody else read that?
Oh, it was a European country.
I thought so.
Luxembourg.
Yeah.
That's
okay.
No, I'm kidding. I don't know what country it was. I just named the smallest country I could think of.
But I mean that raises a good point about this news article is that look, it can be just as severe, if not even more severe, and just because you made it through one time doesn't necessarily mean you can make it through a second time.
Yeah, could come back with a vengeance.
It could. Let's talk football.
Yeah, let's do that. Good
Under
pivot.
happier things.
Good pivot.
Speaking of coming back with a vengeance, let's talk football. Baylor football has 28 active COVID cases. What was it? Ed Orgeron was the head coach of LSU, and he basically comes out and says, everybody on our team has COVID.
I love that you did his voice.
And he did. He said everybody on the team has had COVID, right? And so now it looks like a lot of people on Baylor's team. Let's get ready for some football and some football cancellations. There have been a lot of football cancellations lately. What was it? The game the other night, Texas versus Buffalo Bills, had to be played like on a Tuesday night or something crazy because it was canceled from last week. I think the Patriots game up in your way is going to be canceled this weekend because a lot of those guys were quarantined.
If they cancel Auburn, Alabama, I riot. I'm kidding. I'll think that's a perfectly rational thing to do, but I'll still riot.
They canceled. Well, they've postponed LSU, Florida.
Oh, snap.
Mm-hmm.
All right. It's getting real down in the SEC.
That's a big one. SEC, baby. They're starting to cancel football games.
That's Bible country. They ain't affected by no COVID. They got Jesus. Right. They handle it snakes and football.
They see COVID and they thump it with a Bible. Athletic director Mark Rhodes revealed that the Baylor Bears have 28 active COVID-19 cases within the program, along with 14 staff members. The belief is reportedly that one of the players tested false negative during a game versus West Virginia and Morgantown, and that resulted in a super spreader event. Note to clarify that is a belief, that they do not have scientific evidence, but doesn't mean that it's completely unlikely.
To be fair, that last note was mine because I was really annoyed that they used the belief is because I felt like that's not journalism. That's just somebody conjecturing into an article to convince me of something.
Well, isn't that how science works? It's just what you believe is good, right?
Believe hard enough.
Oh, don't get started with me on that.
I can make these dots connect. Watch me.
It's funny in my building. A lot of times we talk about what is factual and what is a hypothesis, right? And when you're having a discussion about data and somebody starts talking, well, I think this or I believe this, and I'm like, well, now we're having a religious discussion. Because I believe a whole lot of things, but that doesn't make them true.
You got it. Yeah, you get down into philosophy with it. It's like we're talking about things we can touch and feel here. We've got viruses, we've got medicine, we've got understanding of anatomy and biology. We've got a whole lot of tangible things we can work with here. But anyway, moving right along. J&J, that's Johnson & Johnson, the baby oil company, pauses COVID-19 vaccine trials due to unexplained illness in participant. The Johnson & Johnson pause comes a couple months after AstraZeneca had to pause its own trial due to unexplained illness in one of its participants. The study is blinded, meaning that even the people conducting it don't know if the patient received the placebo or the actual vaccine, which I have questions about, Jacob, because I don't truly understand it. There's still information they're working through. This is a voluntary hold, which differs from a regulatory hold. It's not something the FDA told them to do. And the company expects to resume the trial soon. They just have to get more information. It's not out of the ordinary for a trial of this scale to have to pause. This happens all the time when the news isn't watching. So don't get all shaky and be like, I'm not going to get the vaccine, which I think it actually might be detrimental that we're watching all this so closely because it puts more people in a fear state, which is not good. Usually we would just be like, all right, I got the vaccine. We're good. But now we know more, but we're not smart enough to understand it. So we're being given knowledge we don't fully comprehend, and then we're acting irrationally.
Let me give you an example of something about this.
Sure.
So if you're a patient in a clinical study, and let's say you're testing a new medication, right? And it's an experimental drug, and you're part of a clinical trial. And you go out the night before the clinical trial and just go on a bender and just get drunk off your ass. And the next morning, you stumble in, you throw up, and you got a headache. And the doctor asks you, how you feeling? And you're like, well, I just threw up. I've got a headache because I got drunk last night. Guess what the doctor writes down? Nausea, headache, whatever other symptoms he presented with, and gives him the drug. Let's say it's part of the clinical trial. Let's say he's already been in it, or he continues part of the clinical trial. Guess what's going to end up on that drug side effects list?
Nausea,
Headache,
yeah,
nausea.
headache, yeah.
And it may not be because of the actual drug itself. It may be because of something else, but because it happened during a clinical trial, it's going to show up. Now that's an example on the other end of the spectrum, but on this end of the spectrum, it's, look, there are some things that the drugs do cause. For example, if you take a diabetic medication, right, and it's supposed to lower your blood glucose, and you don't eat anything, and it lowers your blood glucose, and you experience a hypoglycemic event, hypoglycemia is definitely a side effect of a glycemic lowering index drug, right? So yeah, you've got to take it sometimes. If you don't understand what's happening in a clinical study, to watch it like this closely, I don't think makes a whole lot of sense for John Q. Public.
Yeah, I understand that. I guess the blinded part's what always throws me, is like, how, if the study's blinded, then how do they know what was and what wasn't? And if it's real severe, did they just throw out the whole thing and go, we had a severe incident, I don't know if it was the vaccine? Like, or does
Right.
it just more data gathering?
Yeah, so there's two terms here. There's a blinded study and a double-blinded study, and TV Strav has just mentioned a double-blinded study, and I can quickly explain what both of them are. A blinded study means that the principal investigator, so the doctor who's running the study, knows what you get. He knows that you're going to get the placebo, or he knows that you're going to get the real drug, and he gives them to you, and he observes. And he'll write down his observations, and they'll do the tests, and at the end of the study, he knows exactly who got the study, but the patients are blinded. If you do a double-blinded study, that means that both the patients and the principal investigator are blinded. So the only one that knows is a statistician upstairs. So the statistician creates a random number generator and assigns numbers to placebo and numbers to active ingredient, or whatever it is. And then they give it to the principal investigator, and the principal investigator assigns each patient a number, and then gives them whatever is on that list, whether it's pill A or pill B. And the PI has no idea. The patient has no idea. Neither one of them have. So that's the return for the double blinded, is that nobody has an idea except for the man upstairs.
Okay. So I just needed to know that someone knew, because if no one knows, what are we learning? So I appreciate that, because every time I've read it, I've been like, what do you mean nobody knows the answer? So statistician upstairs has the key.
It's supposed to be the most unbiased way of testing a drug on the market. You can argue that a blinded study is at least partially blinded, because the principal investigator potentially has interactions with that patient and may know whether or not they're receiving treatment or whether they're receiving placebo, and may give them some kind of cue, and that may throw off or bias the study. Or that's at least the working argument.
Okay. That's good to know. Now I feel more, staring at goats, educating the populace. You're welcome, world.
Well, that's important though, because you all were mentioning how like this is especially tricky because a lot of us are just not, we don't know the science behind vaccine, construction or all that, or research methods and all that, but we have a lot of people like out there claiming that they do know, or at least kind of conjecturing on things. And I think we all at the start of this kind of mentioned, like, that a major problem is that there's a ton of focus on a vaccine, where we've learned way too much probably than we should know or would ever want to know, which has made this, it's just one other kind of part of like this tangle of mental health problems that comes with all the pandemic, I think.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's like I don't want to know if someone got sick on this vaccine. Like, just give me the vaccine. Like, if Fauci says it's good, then I'll take it.
Yeah.
But I don't want to know, like,
I don't need the details. I don't
even know how the sausage is made. It just
if you give me the pill and it says may cause anal leakage, I'm just gonna ignore that and hope that doesn't happen to me.
Just wear extra thick pants for a few days.
Right. You just, and then go, everything all right? Everything's all right. I don't have that side effect. Good. Moving on.
Well, it is interesting because you talk about making the sausage, and there are things about making vaccines that most people don't understand and don't know about. And this goes into a decade usually worth of research to try to make this perfectly safe and effective to do. And we're trying to truncate that into 10 months, number one. But number two, we're also doing it under the scrutiny of the American public. Normally, you come under the scrutiny of the FDA. And the FDA is the one who's asking these questions. Now it's the reporters that are asking these questions and the FDA. So it's just kind of a left hook and then a right away. So it's hard. I'm sure it's hard on these companies to try to deal with this, and especially the communications folks at these companies.
Oh, geez. The press release people, they're like, oh, we got our work cut out for us.
Yeah,
for sure.
So anyway, let's move on. Let's talk about letting COVID-19 spread to achieve herd immunity is unethical, WHO chief says. I can never pronounce this guy's name, but the head of the WHO said to expose people to the virus on purpose in order to bring about herd immunity is unethical. They did this in Sweden, right?
Pretty much, yeah. They didn't really cut off anything over there.
Yeah. Tedros went on to explain that the herd immunity is a phrase often used when a vaccine is being released to the public in order to show if we can get a certain threshold of people immune that can protect the most vulnerable. For the measles, herd immunity was about 95%. For polio, it's about 80%. Never in history has public health has herd immunity been used as a strategy for responding to the outbreak, let alone a pandemic, he says. Relying on naturally obtaining herd immunity in such a situation would be scientifically and ethically problematic. Allowing a dangerous virus that we don't fully understand to run free is simply unethical. It's just not an option. End quote. This is an interesting one because normally herd immunity is achieved through not only vaccine, but also through the normal progression. Think flu every year, right? Flu every year, there's a certain number of people that get vaccinated, and there's a reason why people are like, get your vaccines, because they want a certain number of the population to have the vaccine. There's going to be a certain number of the population that gets sick, but then that will also protect from the spread, because now that 80 to 90% of the people have had it or have a vaccine, that means that they can't become carriers and they can't transmit. Therefore, they're protecting the 10% left, or however many percentage for herd immunity is required for this. Some people are saying that it's roughly 70, 75% maybe that need to get vaccinated to actually achieve this herd immunity. I don't know if any of that's true, because I don't know enough about this long term, but we'll see.
Yeah. The herd immunity thing, just yeah. There's really cool videos out there if you can find them of dots bouncing around, and it's like this one gets vaccinated and this one gets vaccinated. It's like a certain percentage, and it's like the dots that can come into contact that are unvaccinated become far less likely to touch each other. It's actually a pretty cool visual representation of how that works, because our communities, though large, we tend to visit and sit with and be around the same people a lot, or visit the same places. So it's, if you can get control over these groups, you can manage it better, which I think is the end goal. But anyway, moving on to this next remarkably sad story. Thanks, Jacob.
Sorry.
You need to bring awareness. It's good. My kids are starving. Food banks and pantries see explosive demand in North Carolina as pandemic continues. So this one hits close to home for us. Food banks in North Carolina and likely other states are seeing an incredible surge in demand. At the peak of the shutdown in March, the demand was up 50%, and 7 months later remains between 30 and 40% higher than their average demand on food at these pantries. Food banks are now purchasing much of the food they hand out. While they used to rely on donations for the bulk of their resources, the average amount spent on food last year was $80,000 a month. Now they're spending up to $1 million a month trying to supply food to hungry families in our state alone in North Carolina. Nationwide, Feeding America expects to see an 8 million meal shortfall between now and June of next year. The point of this story is this should call us all out to donate to local food banks, food or cash, whatever you've got. They clearly need it because we're still in a pandemic. People are still out of work. People are still lining up, getting food at food banks who have never had to. There are people who didn't even know how to do it, having to call and be like, what am I supposed to do to be allowed to get from this food bank? And, there were tons of churches in this list that were doing everything they could to supply food to the community, and then there were other organizations as well doing the same thing, and they're just all struggling to meet the need. They're meeting it, but I think it's like it's eventually going to catch up if we don't see an influx in donations. This goes back to Jacob. Your concern for months has been the charities that you donate to and the organizations that you are part of. And Patrick, you touched on it earlier, is trying to find people to help and come together and supply the things that these folks need. And it's easy when you haven't been affected to just not do it. So I appreciate articles like this that call it out and be like, hey, now you know, now it's time to step up. So yeah, that was a tough read.
It was, and I've actually got to give credit to one of my coworkers. He's the one that actually called me out on this because we were having a discussion, and he was talking about we were talking about charities and donating, because I was talking about JDRF because right now is a big JDRF season for me. We've got the walk coming up, and of course I'm out fundraising for juvenile diabetes, and he was like, well, I would love to give, but right now all of my extra money is going to a food service. And I'm like, hold on, wait, what food service? And he proceeded to tell me he gives to the interfaith food shuttle up here in Raleigh. And I'm like, oh, I know those guys. They hold a barbecue contest every year. And he was like, yes, those guys. And so I started asking him questions, and he started keying me in on some of the problems that they're having. And that kind of forced me down a rabbit hole of starting to look it up. And I realized, holy shit, do we have a problem?
Yeah.
And it's one that we've got to try to take care of, because this is an acute need. It needs to happen now.
Yeah, this isn't one that's a later thing. This is get this into your monthly budget. Find a way to chuck some money, or go get an extra couple boxes of cereal and canned food when you order your groceries or whatever. It's a big thing. So hey, go out there and find your local food bank or your local whatever that supplies those needs, and help out where you can.
Yeah, man. The last story we're going to do tonight is about Europe.
Good.
Lesson not learned. Europe unprepared for second wave as it's hitting. Europe's second wave of the coronavirus infection has struck well before flu season has started, with most intensive care wards filling up again and bars shutting down. Making matters worse, authorities say, is a widespread case of COVID fatigue. Stephen, you talked about this earlier.
I did.
Epidemiologists and residents alike are pointing the fingers at governments for having failed to seize the summertime lull in cases to prepare adequately for the expected autumn onslaught, with testing and ICU staffing still critically short. But treating the virus medically is only half the battle. Public health officials are also now dealing with scourge and anti-mask protests, which we've touched on. Virus
negationists.
That's an awesome word.
I know. I didn't even know that
virus
was a word.
Negationists. That is awesome. And residents who are simply sick and tired of being told to keep their distance and refrain from hugging their loved ones. And then it keeps on going about more advice and that kind of thing. But what I wanted to bring up were two things. Number one, I speak to a lot of folks in France and in Germany every single day. That's most of my job. I speak to people internationally. And I was speaking to somebody from France today, and we were talking about some things, some items that I need from their team, and some items they need from our team. And the gentleman says, well, Jacob, if you're going to need them, you got to get them now. And I said, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, they're announcing on Friday, likely, that we're just going to shut everything down again here in France. So I looked up the COVID cases in France, and it was just through the roof. It was more than the first outbreak. And so I went, oh, this is a real thing. This second wave is hitting, and it's hitting hard. The other thing I wanted to mention real quickly is Ashley has a good friend, Marie, who just came back from Greece. And she said that everybody in Greece, nobody was wearing a mask. Nobody was social distancing. Everybody was hugging and just living it up. She said the only ones who were required to wear a mask were the waiters, and they were required to socially distance and wear a mask. But everybody else was treating it as if it was something that was kicked in the butt a long time ago. So it kind of explains what's happening in Europe right now.
I actually read in this same article in Czech Republic back in June, they had like an adios COVID party in the town square in Prague. And everybody was out saying like, peace out, COVID, we're done. And I'm like, that's that's a bad move. Like, that seems a little premature. But yeah, it's clearly not gone anywhere. The one other note in this article I thought was fascinating is that the WHO's putting out new advice for governments to not only care for medical stuff but psychological stuff, because they know, and they're also talking about lockdowns instead of just taking in lock it down. They're we talked about this early on in our lockdown, was the mental health of people
Hmm.
during those, like trying to decide what to lock down based more on their psychology and like what is the need of this facility or this thing that we didn't account for when we were first just thinking purely health engaging. Like, there are things that we turned off that people were like, I need this or I'm gonna die or worse. Um, so I think that's pretty good that they've released that. Not that America's listening to them. They're silly, but you know. But
Yeah, no,
anyway,
like I mean, like where I work, like there's been a pretty, strong, kind of concerted effort to, um, kind of give students like the most like quote unquote normal college experience, in this time. And um like I've been reading about like for like reports of like universities like kind of having like sanctioned like outdoor parties like where they might serve alcohol. Of course, if you're of age, and there's of course I don't know, I don't think my university is doing that, but um, it's I think as we kind of are staring down like what could be our second, as we're kind of going into the winter months, like you know um one, like being safe but also being realistic about like the psychological and social needs of people and how to best address those things. Whereas like, yeah, like back, like you all said, back in March and April, it was just we all kind of went into like our our burrows or whatever. And um you know and that took a toll on people. So I've been happy to see that there's now going to be a consideration of like not just like physical health, but like making sure that we're making sure that people are staying sane and psychologically healthy.
yeah, there was so much we didn't touch on early because it was such a big deal, and like the news didn't touch on. But you think of special needs people that live alone. They've got nurses that have to come help them. That was a challenge. You've got kids in situations that are less than stellar, as a nice way of putting it. Not
Yeah,
being able to go to school like that. There were tons of situations that led to that. So hopefully there's alternatives or options now, at least from the WHO guideline perspective. Maybe we can do a better job at managing all that. But yeah, let's do our deep dive. Let's get back into this. So Patrick, uh, we I know as a professional, you are a sociology professor.
yes.
And as someone who doesn't understand very much about what sociology is, other than it's the study of society and civilization and stuff like that, is there anything that, and this is a remarkably open-ended question, and I'm sure Jacob has a better one, but is there anything that we should know as a society about how this is likely to play out, or what we should know about what normal is moving forward?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it was early on, it was stated that like, there's no such thing as like a normal, like, or there's not going to be an endpoint. Uh, I see a question in the chat. Like, I don't know if we're all going to die. I don't know. I hope not. But I will say that societies are incredibly resilient at adapting to things like this. We have a lot of kind of major points in history. We've had like major social upheavals where societies will, figure things out. You know, for me, what I kind of look at a couple things, about this. Like the first one being, what have we learned about like what doesn't work in our society? We know that like there's a long, long history of like income and wealth inequalities, and other sorts of inequalities that I think the pandemic has kind of brought to the forefront. Thinking about kids who are worrying about where their next meal comes from, or kids who don't have access to reliable internet to participate in school. I mean, we've known that these things have existed, but this has become like a forefront issue. Um, and so I think, I think about like what are the lessons we can learn about that? Like, do we invest more resources into making sure that we have a more equitable kind of society there. But also like kind of thinking too, like we a lot of us have we've now gone through this for 6 months now, as we're heading back into the winter months where there's going to be less opportunity to have like these outdoor hangouts. Like we have kind of built up like this emotional capital kind of collectively. We know how to survive, we know how to adapt, and we know how to reach out to our friends and all these things. And so that's sort of like one thing I kind of look at, like, so like what have we learned, but also I look at like, what does this mean about what we should do in the future? There's a lot of in higher education, we talk about like what's the next big disruptor of the higher ed industry. Is it AI? Is it these massive online learning kind of open source things? Is it, and COVID is a disruptor for higher ed. I believe you all kind of talked a little bit about this last week on your own show, but like, I think we're learning that there's new ways to teach, there's new ways to reach people, there's more ways to collaborate across disciplines to kind of to offer more innovative learning experiences. And so I think like for taking that kind of lesson at a much larger kind of societal level, I think there are things that we as a society will kind of take from this. Like I do hope that we take like the increased focus on hygiene with us into the future. But I think I'm hopeful that we'll come out of this with maybe thinking a little bit more collective minded. And what I mean by that is that we are less individualistic in our thinking. Um, it's probably more of a glass half full interpretation, but I am hopeful that places like American society will become more collective in their views about taking care of one another and being willing to be uncomfortable in something like a mask as long as it's helping someone else. Um, and so I don't think this like is the downfall of society, but it definitely is it is a step where we have to evolve quickly, and we can't go back to. I don't think there's going to be a sense of like a normal kind of pre-COVID. I think we will always probably have like a concern about health, about spreading of a virus or something. We'll probably still see a lot of like safety protocols, maybe not so much with the masks or whatever, um, but I think we'll have like this sort of kind of gradual kind of easing back into things. Even after a vaccine, I don't really see us getting away from masks for a long time. But that was a very long, rambly answer. Did I answer your
No, that was
question at all?
good. No, that was good. You said a couple things I want to follow up on as
Let's do
well.
that. Let's do that.
Yeah, you said you mentioned in college is disruption, and it cued me into this thought that is this going to force college to be more competitive? In that, like, imagine for a moment, colleges are often rejecting people. I'm going to reject this person, reject this person. Sometimes it's academic based. They're just like, they're not smart enough to go here. Sometimes it's just capacity based. I'm rejecting them because I don't have room in the dorms for freshmen, and our policy is we require freshmen here at the dorms. Is there a possibility that moving forward, higher ed goes like, hey, whoever wants to do it virtually with us? And see more colleges like, I want to go there, but they don't have room for me. But now they do have room, and they're like, please come in. If you fail, it's your fault. Give us your money. Like, is that a thing for the industry moving forward? I like that you referred to it as an industry too. That was pretty good because it is, and we talk about that a lot.
It is.
But yeah,
It is.
yeah,
No, I think it is. I think we will. So when universities approached e-learning back when a lot I guess now almost 2 decades ago, it was a spectacular failure. In my opinion, it was basically like a glorified correspondence course. And there's that's some people that works for them, but like it was basically like you have like this course website and like you every week go upload something, but you have like no interaction with like your teachers or your fellow students. And so like and we so I don't think that's like a true authentic learning, but like we're now like, able to kind of see our abilities to kind of, do more virtual teaching. For example, here for me, like our university right now, we're on a on-campus pause. We had an outbreak in one of our dorms, and so they have decided to suspend on-campus instruction for a week as a hopes to kind of minimize spread. And like also it was kind of interesting, they gave us a mental health day today, so like they just unanimously just canceled classes today. Um I don't have Wednesday classes, so it didn't really do much for me, but it's like,
You're already healthy mentally, apparently.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm all good to go. But like but like when I'm teaching at home, like I'm basically like I'm putting my camera up on this shelf over here, and I'm basically like a YouTuber talking about statistics, and it's I've had to force myself to learn, like, kind of newer tech of teaching. Like I can do a whiteboard thing now, which I'm pretty proud of. Although it's probably very basic for some people, but I'm proud of it.
I'm impressed by you,
Um,
Patrick. I'm impressed.
but like I think like but even like when we were in the classroom this semester, I've had a few students which I just had a policy of like, if you are not comfortable, if you live with someone who is a high risk population and you don't want to come to a classroom and risk it, I'm not going to penalize you for that. What I will do is I will open up Zoom. I will connect the all the in classroom computers to that, and I will make sure do my best to not wander too far away from my microphone to and to teach. And um, you know, it's I think this is it makes things a little bit more accessible there. But I would say, to that point, it also means making sure people have access to the tech to do it. I am pretty lucky, that I don't, I think, I don't know how to put this, but like, I don't have a child, right? So, I can spend money on tech stuff and not feel guilty about it and not spend it on a child because I don't have a child, I have a dog that I consider my child, but that's not a child. Um, um, so like, but I think it's like, if universities, and I do hope we kind of do more of this, like we're gonna need to make sure that the teachers have access to this stuff, but also making sure students have full good access to reliable internet, cheaper textbooks, and things that just make college a lot more affordable. Because there's no reason why someone should have to take on a lifetime of debt to get a degree, especially if they're going to have to balance some virtual with in person. So I think it does kind of, like a lot of universities are hiring consultants and whatnot to sort of kind of create like a more virtual learning sort of thing, where we are more accessible. And I'll say for me too, like even like now, my office hours, I keep them actually in the evening now, which is I don't hate doing office hours from home because basically I just turn on Zoom or I'll do other work or I'll just sit here and play bass, until someone pops in. But I mean, even something like that, is it makes things a lot more accessible to students who are balancing childcare and families and whatnot. So I think it will disrupt things for the better, and it's just a matter of making sure that people can do it well.
Do you think your
I'll
students find you more accessible?
do what?
Do you think your students find you more accessible? So they have this opportunity to reach you virtually as opposed to
Yeah,
walking into your office. Do they communicate that to you, or do you feel like they find you more accessible?
yeah, I think they do. I'll give an example. Like so I teach statistics, a lot of stats courses, which is not everyone's favorite topic. It's math, but back before, like if someone wanted, I would come, walking back to my office from a classroom, I would come back and find like a line of students, waiting to kind of go over homeworks or whatever. And it's like, in a regular kind of physical meeting setting, there's like you have like the getting settled in and like how's it going, and then like you kind of go over things, and then you might, BS a little bit or kind of just talk about life, and then they go and the next one comes in. Um, or they don't come at all because also my office is like on the far end of campus that no one wants to
Yep.
go to. Whereas like now, like if I'm sitting here like at like 5 p.m. like on a Tuesday, I'm just like kind of hanging out. Someone just drops in like, hey, I had a quick question about this one. Can you kind of and like it's yeah, I think it's like people will drop in and drop out as they're like I have one student who's like I came in with a question and then said, okay, I'm gonna go work on this, and then you're gonna be here for another 2 hours, right? I'm like, yep, I'm here. And so like about 30 minutes later, she's like, hi, I'm back. I have this question about this now. So yeah, I think it makes it much more accessible, and I don't hate it. I think it's nice to be that. I mean, some people don't like that, and I get that. But I'm a person who benefited a lot from individual one-on-one meetings with faculty when I was a student, and so I want to kind of pay that forward. But I also love, side note here with the teaching, I also like kind of signing into the Zoom session about 10 minutes early and like just muting my camera, but like playing like some like really old music because to kind of troll them a little bit. Um,
There you
Yesterday
go.
was Hall Notes, so
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
you should have posted the Hollow Notes hotline.
yeah,
Oh, have you ever
On your-
called that number, Patrick? Calling Oates?
no,
I'm gonna
no,
send it to you, and it's
please do,
it's the Hall and Oates emergency hotline, and it's
please do.
it's glorious. It's been around
So
for like 30 years.
I wanted to get back to something you were talking about earlier because you're that there was so much to unpack from that opening question that I didn't even know where to begin. But I think now I've kind of got an idea. What are we going to take away? I mean, you mentioned a couple of things that we're going to take away from this as a society, but I guess my question is, do you think that we're introspective enough to really grab a hold of some of these lessons that we're supposed to be learning and actually consume them and wear them, or where are we in that spectrum?
Yeah, so that's a really important and big question there. I think I tend to take an optimistic view about societal change. We tend to bend towards like more progressive kind of movement. Time is like the best predictor of progressive policy and things like that. Um, I think you will have a significant portion of the population that will to their dying day believe that COVID-19 was a conspiracy of some sort and just not take it seriously. Um, but I do think that you will have a lot more people like kind of thinking more collectively about things. Um, Whether that's like making donations to a food bank or being willing to inconvenience themselves a little bit more just to make sure someone has something that they don't something that they need. um, I tend to be optimistic about that,
Mhm.
but I do think I mean I think I think if my just just conjecture here,
Sure.
you'll
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
have two I think you'll have two kind of trends going on. You'll have the people that will want to go back to a full on normal individualistic society, and then you'll have this other kind of trend of people wanting to kind of slowly move towards more kind of collective things. um, I think kind of at a broad sort of like kind of level, this pandemic has revealed that like our welfare state is woefully inadequate for handling situations like this. Um, our our funding for programs like food banks and other pro-social things is very inadequate, and as I do hope that we take those lessons and actually redirect funding for those sorts of things there. So I think it's a mixed bag. I'm optimistic,
Hmm.
but that might be just me more of like it's month what 7 of this now, month 8,
A whole
6.
bunch of months. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just keep
It's
ticking them off.
yeah,
Um,
maybe like I'm just kind of finding that optimism is the only way to get through it.
yeah.
That's
No,
that's
I think
perfectly
that's fair.
yeah. That's perfectly reasonable. I mean, history speaks to us rising above and coming back stronger. Like if you go back to
Sure.
the 1900s, our medical system was a complete disaster. Like right before the flu hit, like we had doctors who'd never touched a patient opening an office because they were white and wealthy. Give them a degree. And when we got hit with something we were unprepared for, we became the best medical the best country in the world for medical care. Like we rocked it out, and Germany went like, dang, the U.S. really pulled up from behind, which is what we tend to do. We tend to be completely out of the loop and then like barrel forward and go, hey, we win now. And that's what we've done historically. I'm just interested to see if that carries forward with something like this.
Well, so go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say this is a little bit different feeling to me because I'm not sure that we have the same unity that I feel like we've had in the past. Before, it's always been a common collective moving toward this communal solution, right? And now I'm not so sure I see that in our society. What I see is a schismed population that is fractured in multiple ways, and they all have a different opinion about where we should go and what we should be focused on. And I'm not sure that we're really capturing the essence of what we should be learning from this. And that's what I'm afraid of, is that everybody's going to take away something a little bit different, but there's not going to be this collective mentality or this collective learning, because it depends on where you get your news from as far as what you believe or what you're hearing or what you think is the lesson. And I'm not sure that those are necessarily adequate whenever you're talking about, moving forward and trying to understand what happened here.
Yeah, I think it's a really a very, very valid concern. I think there's not been something to kind of like to tie all this into one like cohesive narrative. It's a very messy story, and that there's not been like a good like narrator to be cliche about it, right? And I think that is a very valid concern, that maybe we're all going to be taking like the wrong lessons or contradictory lessons from this. And I think that could be concerning.
My hope is that whoever comes out with the nonsense, they just, when we get through whatever this episode is, they just go, the light, and they burrow down into a hole, and we never see them again. And it just goes back to them being silently weird, and the rest of us moving forward like we should, and going, here's how mature people handle this. You're just a weird goblin. Go back into your cave. You can hide in your tunnel in Montana and do whatever you want. But the rest of us are going to try to keep on trucking here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just look at Europe. We just talked about this.
Yeah.
Europe 6 months ago was on complete lockdown, and they made fun of those American idiots over here that were just experiencing this ridiculously crazy outbreak of COVID-19 and massive numbers of deaths. And now, if you look at what's happening with their numbers, it's going way back up, and they're going back on lockdown, and they're going to try to reinstitute these things. That indicates to me, did they learn anything about what happened to them the first go round? I mean, they saw what happened in Italy. They saw massive amounts of death and transmission, and it didn't phase them, because 6 months later they knew this was coming, and we know that this is coming, and it's still going to happen because, like the article said, we didn't do our due diligence in the summer to make it go away.
It's kind of like that process of like, I think I've heard this kind of comparison before, is that it's like being in elementary school and your whole class misses out on recess because there's a few bad apples, that are acting bad. I think if we I think we, the collective we, had like said, you know what, we're going to deal with a lockdown that's going to be much longer than, like what, like 2 months, I think, for some states. I can't remember like when Connecticut kind of started having their phase one reentry or whatever. But, if we kind of like just dealt with like a much more expanded lockdown, and making sure that we were taking care of people, would we be in a similar situation? I mean, I don't know. That's a question for a public health person, I guess. But it's just sort of like, why couldn't we just like behave back in March and April?
When we had 2 cases in a state, 1 case in a state, 3. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It
And
just
this, it's but everyone, I don't know. It's interesting. It's I don't know where we're going, but
It's all right. I think Steven and I like to ask these kind of questions on long car rides.
Oh
And
gosh.
then
no,
we
I mean,
just,
this is sort of what I do in my classes. Like, what's the big picture here? Like, if you could run, and
Yeah.
I usually just get blank stares, or these days just like kind of blank screens with muted microphones, just like
Who's gonna speak up first?
Yeah.
18-year-olds aren't exactly deep thinkers yet. And the ones that are, you're like, well, I mean, you're completely off base, but good job, good attempt.
yeah. Well, so
Yeah,
speaking of your students, have any of your students just kind of overwhelmed you whenever you looked at them and they asked you questions or they talked about how they're handling it? Or are there anything, is there anything that you can like give to the audience as far as what have you experienced relative to your students? Because these are 18-year-old kids living in a pandemic that are going to school for the first time away from their families, right?
Yeah.
So I'm sure they're bound to have some unusual experiences.
Yeah, yeah. I've learned a lot, and I've kind of reevaluated some of my my methods. Over the summer, I um, got this. I got this awesome opportunity to kind of work with several other professors in different departments, like in English and history and um, um, political science and whatnot, to lead like this big like class that we call a pandemic as social mirror. Um, and the idea is basically would be a 6-week class where we had 180 students in it, and we would bring in like these guest speakers to give like these we asked them all to kind of create like these TED Talk style lectures about the pandemic from their perspective, but part of that was that we had like the big meetings, and then we had like each our own like section of students, and and kind of talking to them, like these were students who were um you know about to graduate high school. They had just graduated high school. These are students who missed out on a prom, a graduation, the normal experience of coming to a college campus to do like your registration and all that stuff. Um, and also we're just pretty darn tired of living with their parents for 6 months, under that thing.
Right.
And so what I've kind of learned is that like, we all um, tend to when we have like these big events, like something like a pandemic, we kind of think that like we take a perspective that only us as having like this unique experience, and that no one gets it, kind of thing. And so, kind of what I've learned from my students is that is that we all are experiencing this and handling this in different ways. And for people who work with students in any capacity, should learn to take a more empathic approach and to not view students as adversaries. And so what I mean by that, um, the professors that like will, um, you know, um, not be flexible on due dates. The professors that will demand that you give a copy of an obituary if you had to miss class because your mom died or something, right? Stuff like that, which is
Yeah.
this is just awful, right? But I think I've learned from me kind of talking with my students that they are living pretty active, hectic lives. That I think it's just how the average college student is these days. They're working full time jobs. Some of them have kids. They have aging parents that they're taking care of, and to be empathic towards them. Still be rigorous, like in your grading and like in your expectations, but also being okay with like if someone has to turn in an assignment a day late because they were taking their mom to a hospital or they were up all night with a sick kid. That's fine with me. That's I think, and I've kind of done a lot of sort of like self evaluation on that for me, kind of talking with students about that, and I've been like asking for more feedback from them as throughout, like, is my pacing okay? I know we're all super stressed right now and we're all on edge on things. And so I think just yeah, empathy is the thing. Just we're all experiencing this in different ways, and some of us have different circumstances that we're experiencing this, um, and just to be empathic about it, I guess. Is that I
Yeah.
tend to ramble.
No,
No.
that's
I think
great.
that's great. Yeah, I love to hear this stuff. I mean, and what I would love to find out is, do you feel like your students are behaving in the same way? Do they have this kind of same self evaluation with the way they're approaching not only school but COVID? And I
I
mean,
think
there are so many places to go with this, by the
Yeah,
way.
right.
So yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think they're being, what I'm liking is that they're being more vocal about their needs, which I think is very important. I think, they should be very vocal about what they need from me or from others. Um, they are also being very understanding with people like me that might fumble with the technology a little bit. Like we just, our university, and I don't think we're alone here, saw this as the opportunity to like let's introduce all these new like platforms to do things on. Like great. So like which is they're great changes, and they're definitely much better platforms to use, or systems to use. But let's have an easing into it maybe. But they're being very like forgiving about those things. But I also kind of find that like my approach is to kind of like try to keep the mood light in my classes. I tell really bad jokes, and make really bad puns, and so I think the more that we can kind of humanize ourselves, the more that they're going to be willing to humanize themselves for us, and I think it just makes for a much better experience. Now we'll see when my teaching evaluations come in December. Maybe they hated me, I don't know. But um, at least they're being very nice to my face right now, so
There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
I will say that as someone with anxiety, when it came to talking to any professor ever, your approach makes me smile, because I'm like, people like me that were scared to death of like talking to a professor, like that means the world. And like those professors that were cool and did tell the stories and stuff, I remember them in the most positive light. And it's an old break the ice tactic, is just tell everyone in front of you the most embarrassing story about yourself you can, and they all have an equal embarrassing story, and like, oh, that guy, he's just like we're, and then it just opens the floodgates. Just tell
Yeah.
that one time I farted in front of my girlfriend, and everybody's like, and it's an immediate connection. Everybody gets you all of a sudden.
yeah,
And I'm sure that the mohawk and the beard help too.
Yeah.
That kind of
it gives me a little more cred. It's
There it is.
it's if I can like reference like Taylor Swift in my stats word problems, and they tend to like that. Although I will say I'm a little disappointed. So I have like this set of questions and stats that are like Star Wars themed that I'm pretty proud of. And every year when I do those questions, like less and less students are getting the references, and it's making me very
Oh,
sad.
Oh, it
oh.
should.
Um, um, but yeah, I think it's just I think I mean, we want to be professional with our students. We want to keep boundaries, and for sure, but we also we're all humans here, and um, anything that I can do to make things less hard. So Steven, I was the same way. Like with going to one-on-ones, I can remember like my very first college class when I spoke up. The professor made fun of my answer, and that I can still remember that moment. Like that's like that guy was a jerk. But I think it's especially these days right now where we're just, and maybe some students might be getting away with some leniency. Maybe I'm being hoodwinked by some, but I think it's fine.
I'd
Like
like to
it's
believe that they're in the minority, and that you're the
I think so.
most of them. And I believe that about humanity. Most people
Yeah.
just want to travel and drink beer and talk to their friends. Like the vast majority of humans want to just do that, and could
And the
really care
faster
less.
we take the pandemic seriously, the faster we can get back to traveling.
Boom. way to segue. For instance, let's segue into your guest prediction. I want to know where you think we're going to be in the next 3 to 6 months. It can be off the rails. It can be something reasonable wherever you want to go.
In our houses.
Such a universal answer everyone's given.
Where will be? Okay, so 3 to 6 months. This is we're now in the new year, right?
After Christmas, after New Year's, you're starting January 1. What are we going to be doing?
2021 solves all the problems.
Well, there won't be any more of those Facebook posts telling me to not put just 20 in my checks because they might change the date on them. You remember that back at the start of the new year? Like, it was like, don't put just 20 because they could
put 2000 whatever in there.
So new year, I mean, there's a lot up in the air, right? We're in an election. We are hopefully looking for a vaccine. Like, I don't know about how to read timelines of those things. That's definitely outside of my expertise. But I'm confident that in 3 to 6 months we'll be seeing a light at the end of the tunnel, I think. Again, I tend to skew more optimistic on these things.
Yeah.
We'll still be at home probably. But I think maybe I think everyone in this panel will have gone to at least see their families, at some point. I'm definitely hoping for that because I, like you, Stephen, haven't seen my mom since December, and that kills me.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the nieces and nephews since then too, which just sucks. But I think we will be seeing a light at the end of the tunnel. And I think I think we'll be
on our way out.
There it
is. I think so. I think on our way out. Maybe not completely maskless or anything like that, but I think we will. I think we'll also have like the tolerance to just roll with it. 3 to 6 months from now is a full year into this, and we will have survived it, and we know how to deal with it.
Yeah, the transformation will have been complete.
We will have emerged from the cocoon.
We will now be a butterfly. Well, speaking of a butterfly, what's one thing you've learned about yourself through this process? I mean, is there one thing that stands out? Like you go, man, I'm a I don't know, whatever you might have learned. I'm a better cook than I thought I was.
Definitely not a better cook. That's for sure. I think I've learned about myself. That's a big question. I think I've learned a lot about how to be more self-reflective, which is kind of a cliche answer, but my workspace at home is kind of down here in the basement. I'm down here alone a lot, kind of in this weird room. And I'll just kind of sit and think about things, and I'll do some writing. And I've kind of thought more about sort of like, how to think differently about people in my life, my students, my approach to work. I've been thinking about sort of like, coming into, we're all about to hit our midlife crisis, which is so.
I'm there.
I think
midlife. Yeah. What are you talking about? I don't know what y'all are talking about.
Hence the new bass guitar, right? That's the. But yeah, I think I'm just. Oh yeah, that's a beauty.
We're there.
But like, yeah, I think I've learned to take kind of self-reflection more seriously, and to kind of continually revisit things in my life on that. If that makes any sense. I think we've all had a lot of alone time. Thinking of things about like things about your ego and things like that, but
we've had enough time to be self-reflective. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of like I think I've noticed myself like when certain experiences happen during the day, like it's like, oh, this reminds me of when I was thinking the other night about this, like, and I really hadn't done that before, and so I think that's something that's been a new skill or mental process I've developed. I don't know. But I also learned a side note that I've been playing a Blink-182 song wrong incorrectly for 17 years now on the bass. So
Now that's what you truly have learned. That's what you've taken away from this experience.
Gosh, Patrick,
So-
we're the same person. I learned the exact same thing you did. I've been playing all the small things wrong since I learned it. So yeah, we're in the same boat.
for me, it was feeling this. I was feeling this wrong.
Wow,
But
good lessons learned.
it was all part of that self-reflection thing.
Yeah, I'm gonna sit down and actually learn how to play an instrument. Imagine that, what you can do instead of just banging on it for for half my life.
But that's all. But that's also
said-
that's fun too, and that's valid.
It's worth it. Yeah, it's absolutely worth it. Well, Patrick, man, it has been an absolute joy having you on the show and just reconnecting after a million. We need to do this more often. I need to get a beer. I'm going to say this, and I intend to do this more often, but we need to get us a beer, sit, and chit chat a little bit because this has been absolutely great. We've got no mail this week, you guys, but if you have questions, comments, feedback, please send that to staringatgoatspodcast@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you and read them on the show. Patrick, is there anything you want to promote? Anything you want to tell people about? Do you have any work out there? If not, cool. Because you're not like on any of the socials. You're not on any of them.
No, I mean my mom has more Instagram followers than I do. So it's just pictures of my dog.
Well, that's good. That's good.
Nothing to promote.
Well, hey, we're glad you're here anyway. We're super excited that you joined us. Next guest next week, there's not going to be one because me and Jacob are going to RUNNOFT.
That's right,
So
baby.
we're not gonna be around for the show next week. We're planning something, but as you know, if you've been a fan of Two Dorks long enough, we may or may not accomplish our goals. But hopefully you'll have something in your feed next week. For Staring at Goats, if you enjoyed the podcast, please leave us a review on your favorite podcasting service of choice. Just throw some stars in there. It makes us feel good about ourselves. You can follow us on Twitter. It's at staring_goats. Send us questions or whatever on there. And you can join our Patreon, twodorks.net/support, where you can join the likes of Hammerdorf, Og, Adam, and Christina of Geekheim, Oddly Normal One, and our parents, who have been supporting us for a while now, and it always makes me smile when I get that Patreon support, and I'm like, that web server over there, paid for. Y'all are keeping the lights on, and it means the world to us. But man, that's it for us here on Staring at Goats. We'll see y'all next time. Awesome.
Boom.
Awesome.
Another one